everybody. It is, if you're catching us live, 2 p.m. Eastern, 1 p.m. Central for the other two people on the screen right now, on a Friday afternoon. And that means it's time for another kick-ass career conversation. I'm Kim.
I'm Louise.
And we're joined today by
Chuck Allworth. Hi.
Hey, Chuck, we're so glad to have you here. We're going to tell the world about who you are and what specialness you bring to this table in just a little bit. But first, we want to start off this week like we start off every week. What are we celebrating today, friends?
I'm celebrating not just the sunshine and the blue sky today. I've had a really unique opportunity to attend a series of webinars and events over the last few weeks. And this week was chocked full of these opportunities to connect with other women across the country. And I'm so, I don't know, flabbergasted, I think, by how helpful doesn't even begin to explain the kind of support that I've received from these people that I don't even know. I haven't met them in person. I look at them for a few minutes and everyone is jumping in to help support and grow my business. And I see it happen all over. I attended 2 days of these little webinars and conferences online, and over and over again, I saw people reach out to help and offer advice and support. And it was fantastic. And so I think I'm celebrating people today. Just celebrating that when you connect with your folks, with your peeps, and you find yourself in that right space, it's like, just like, I don't know, it's like gasoline on a fire. And I don't know. In a good way. Yeah, I'm not burning. Oh, I was going to say I'm not burning anything down, but maybe I am. But we talked about letting things go that don't serve last week. And so maybe that's a little bit about it too. But yeah, I don't know why I'm surprised by people and how they want to help. But I was just blown away this last week by everyone there in the group. So I'm celebrating people and how great they are.
That's awesome.
How about you, Chuck? What are you celebrating today?
Well, here in the U.S., it's Thanksgiving week. Yesterday was Thanksgiving, so lots of family happenings. Very thankful for and celebrating my family, my wife of 42 years, my 3 kids, all of whom are adults now and with their own awesome careers, and celebrating some new lives in our family. So not the least of which is my granddaughter who was born, my 4th granddaughter, who was born just a couple of months ago. So, yeah.
Chuck, it's been more than a minute since we've talked. 4 grandkids?
I know. How about it?
Wow.
4 girls. We're growing the girl gang here.
Oh, that's so cool. Whatever I'm celebrating your grandkids. That's awesome. That brings me so much joy. I love that. Yeah, it is strange not being in the States. Is this our 3rd? No, this is our set. I don't remember. I came up in August of 21, so it'd been November 21, November 22. Yeah, this is our 3rd Thanksgiving that we're not in the States, and the 2 prior to that we did virtually. So it's been a hot minute since we've done U.S. Thanksgiving with our family. We did Canadian Thanksgiving back in October, and that was lovely because Mom was up here for that with us, and so that was fun. But what am I celebrating this week? I think I am celebrating new connections. I have been, just like every week, I probably talked to anywhere between 5 and 10 new people every week. And sometimes they're just really fun conversations and then, right, goodbye. And if we ever talk again, that'd be cool, but we don't really have plans to do that. There are some people that you're like, wow, we were absolutely meant to meet. And I am grateful that we have this time, and how do we want to continue to nurture and nourish this relationship? And there were 2 of those women, both of them were women this week, that I met, and wow, I had a second coffee chat with one of them this morning, and just filled my soul. It just feels good. Talk about finding the right fit, finding your peeps, finding family in people that you're not related to, but really feel at home with. So that's what I'm
I love that.
Yeah. So it's about the people this week. I love that. All
It's
three of us
about
were
the
about the
people.
people. Yeah. And if you spend any time with me, my mantra tends to be people. Love humanity. People sometimes challenge me, but I digress. This week we're celebrating them. We're going to celebrate one special person today. I'm going to tell you a little bit about Chuck. And then I know Chuck Louise has a question for you. So Chuck is married, father of 3, grandfather of 4, which we're so excited about. We just heard about that. Resident of Glenview, Illinois, still going strong full-time in the 5th decade of his career, vast majority of which was spent as a charitable gift fundraiser. He had 13 different employers in the first 28 years of his career and only one for the last 14 and a half years. Somebody might have had something to do with the fact that he was hired into the most recent one that he's had for 14 and a half years. I don't know who that might be. And I just love that you're still there and that you found your right fit. And we're going to hear all about that. Louise, do you want to ask the $1 million question?
Chuck, when we were kind of talking before we went live, talking about these careers, these jobs that you had, I imagined like a stone kind of skipping on the water where you were like dipping. And then all of a sudden you were able to land and find something that really fit, right? You just got grounded and found it. Tell our listeners too, a little bit about like what that career journey has been like, the skipping on the rock. And then how did you know that like you landed someplace that just really that stuck?
So I'm going to take us back to 5th grade. And in 5th grade is when I first began studying Spanish. And I've actually had more years of academic preparation in Spanish than I've had in math. So I starting from 5th grade all the way through my 9th semester of college, I studied Spanish and never stopped, always took Spanish. And obviously liked it, decided to double major in Spanish and international business in college. In fact, chose my college because it offered international business. And the reason why that appealed to me was because of Spanish. So when I was looking for a job in senior year of college, I was looking for jobs that were multinational with multinational organizations, and so I was thinking that my career goal was to become this hotshot, high-flying, jet-setting corporate guy traveling all over the world for multinational corporations. And the very first job I had was a very short stint with a branch bank of an English bank in Chicago. But then I answered an ad, a blind ad in the Chicago Tribune from the classified ads on a print newspaper, and didn't know who I was applying to at all. But it said International Association seeks entry-level manager for its donor services department. I answered it, and one thing led to another, and I took that job, and it wound up being with the Lions Clubs International Foundation, and so I went to work for the charitable arm of Lions Clubs International, and it was there that I got a taste for fundraising, and I liked it, and it was international as well. So I was, very fortunate that in that really second job out of college, I was doing what I thought I would be doing, minus the corporate side, minus the executive, corporate thing. Although, did have an opportunity to travel and use my Spanish a little bit. But then, so that was 6 years at Lions Clubs International Foundation, and left there in like 1986. So in between 1986 and 2009 is when I had, doing the stone skipping, Louise, right? And bouncing around a bit. And frankly, that isn't all that rare for people in my profession. Kim can back me up on this because she's been a fundraiser. She knows it's, I've seen different stats on this, but they range like the average tenure of a fundraiser. The lowest I've seen is about 16 months, and the highest I've seen is about 3.5 years. And that's just, different organizations doing different surveys and putting together different stats and such. But so it's really in the, roughly 2 years, and then and that's it. And that was me from 1986 to 2009. And I didn't use my Spanish at all during that time. And so, what does that tell you? That I didn't have that in any of the jobs that I was in. And then, I would have liked it, but oftentimes, jobs are they're saying, bilingual or Spanish speaking is a plus. And that was what happened when Kim hired me into the job in 2009. So I really went for quite some time without doing any Spanish. So I was, again, 6 years at Lions. I was 6 years at another job, and then had a bunch of very, very short-term jobs, and then came into where I am now, and that's just it just is right in my wheelhouse. It's just it just everything came together so well. The serving Spanish speaking populations, the fundraising, the mission that is just a golden mission. And I think that was perhaps part of the other reasons why my stones kept skipping along the way, is because the mission oftentimes was good, but for me, it wasn't something I could embrace. So I'll give you an example. I brush my teeth every day.
Good job. That's why I hired you.
I floss. Not every day, but a lot. And I had a job with a dental health organization, and I wasn't a dental health professional, and they're the ones that are passionate about their mission. I was a fundraiser. I was a hired gun, and I wasn't really in it because I was convinced of the mission that this is something that I could really wrap my arms around. And that was a short-term stay for me, maybe 18 months. But here I am now, going on 15 years at this organization, which, as I said, is right in my wheelhouse. I couldn't be happier. Thank you, Kim Romaine.
You're very welcome. It's so funny because I actually remember our interview. Do you remember when we sat down and we were talking that first time, or like around that?
Sure.
Okay. One of the things that stood out for me, so you told me this story about Spanish being in your blood your whole life, and that this was important. I remember that story when we were first talking. I also remember, like, you did your homework. You were a great interviewee in that you did your homework about the organization. But what you can't fake was how you lit up. You were giddy, you were excited, you were joyful about what we were doing, and you weren't even involved yet. How did you kind of attach to that before you even got involved with the job?
Probably when you told me that it would involve travel to Spanish-speaking countries. And children. I mean, what's not to like about that? For me, it was just it was something to make me giddy. I couldn't wait. So yeah, it was. And speaking of interviews, I mean, I'm glad you thought that I was a good interviewee, because I mean, quite honestly, I've had a lot of practice.
Mhm.
With having as many jobs as I've had, and when you think that the typical job takes 2, 3, sometimes more interviews before you land it, and then all of those jobs that I interviewed for and didn't get, I mean, I did the math. I'm pushing 100 interviews.
Yeah. Yeah.
Contrast that with my wife. One interview. She had one interview, she got hired. She hasn't left that place since college.
Wow.
Yeah, how about that? Anyway.
Well, I
She's an
talk,
outlier.
it's so interesting because, I talk so much about, how do we align who we are on the inside with what we do on the outside, right? And that has a lot to do with like where we land. Where do we land and choose to give our gift, right? Because we all have a gift. We all have a superpower and we get to give it somewhere. And when we can align that organizational values and their culture with like something that's inside of us, the road, it gets smoother, and you get connected with what you're doing, and you like your tenure speaks for itself. But also, like, even just as you're talking, we all know that you're plugged into the work that you're doing, right? We can see it, we can hear it, which I think is fantastic. But not all of us do that. Not all of us like say like, I'm looking for an organization that aligns with my values, or right. And what do you think, like, when you were bouncing those stones and kind of going from one thing to the next, was it your drive for, like, was it success that drove you, or like what was the driver that allowed you to kind of go from one job to the next? What were you looking for back then?
You know, that's a great question. And as I look back on it, I can point to several things. I can't point to just one though. Honestly, in some cases, it wasn't my choice to be looking for a new job. I sometimes will joke with people about fundraising, is that fundraisers are like professional baseball managers. They're hired to be fired. And so we're definitely a nomadic lot. And so one of the reasons for that is because you get into an organization, it isn't a good fit, and either you realize that it's time to go, or they realize that it's time for you to go. So there's that. There was a certain amount of looking for career advancement and greener pastures involved in that. And then there was a certain amount of being in a place where it just wasn't healthy for me, and I didn't like it. It's interesting because in some of those instances where I was just like, well, this isn't for me, I need to look, and I need to keep looking. I do have some regrets on that, actually. Like I didn't stick it out longer. Maybe I should have in some of 2 or 3 jobs that I can look back on and say, yeah, it was difficult, but people come and go. Organizations aren't static. They change. And so, I often think about, well, what would have happened if I had just stuck it out and that person who was giving me such a hard time before left? And maybe if I just hung on a little while longer. But everything happens for a reason. All of my steps led to where I am now, and so I'm happy that they brought me where I am. But yeah, I can't point to any one driver, Louise, that caused me to move from one to the other.
So I'm curious, from that lens of being a dad, right, with these adult kiddos out in the world, starting their own families, what kind of conversations do you have with them around their own careers?
I'm going to go back to what I just said, like in talking with them, and moaning and complaining or whatever they're doing about something. I'm like, you just, this too shall pass. Stick it out. Don't jump too soon. And basically, I'm giving them advice that I wish someone had given me in some of the jobs that I'd had, right? So I feel like, as someone who jumped around a lot, I think I found it difficult in some situations where I was interviewing, where I was defending, jumping around a lot, and that, you, depending upon who you're talking to, if you're not talking to someone as open and wonderful as Kim Romaine, they might, feel like, well, that's a red flag, and we're not going to go in that direction. So that is why when I'm talking to my kids, I'm saying, you need to, especially in your first couple of jobs, really, try your hardest to establish, some, not job security isn't the word, but length of tenure is what I'm, talking about here, is not leaving too soon and setting yourself up for, too much stone skipping, as Louise coined that term. I like that.
Yeah. I often talk to people around, we can get into a place and that doesn't fit. And then like you said, right? Like, it's like, I'm in the wrong place. I'm doing the wrong thing. Like I gotta go. And that's really about, I think we give our power away often to those external factors, right? We say, okay, this environment's not exactly what I imagined, or this person's not exactly who I imagined, and so I'm going to leave because X, Y, or Z. And we never really understand what it is that we can learn, I think, from being in a place like that. Like, we're just letting the environment dictate if we stay or go. And taking control of our career journey is about understanding, like what am I learning, or what do I want to learn in this role? Can I learn that in this role? And if so, let's stick it out and learn it. If not, then let's go. Right. But it's back to your own, like, you're deciding to go for your own reasons. And it's not externally kind of pushed upon you. Right. I'm having the same conversations with my kiddo. He's 17. Right. And so he's just kind of entering the workforce, getting his first summer jobs and doing all of that, and trying to figure out university, and trying to figure out, like, what do I want to do for the rest of my life? And it's like, I'm like, good golly, like, it's not the rest of your life that you're training for. It's just like this next step. So, like, what is it that you want to learn at this part-time job, right? Do you want to learn how to communicate with adults, with people who are older than you? Do you want to learn how to get along on a team? Do you want to learn, right? Like, there's all of these things he can learn, even if he's stocking shelves or, right, a cashier. It doesn't have to be like just a job. You can be intentional about what it is that you want to learn. But yeah, it brings our power back to ourselves to say, like, I'm going to stick this out until I learn this, or I'm going to figure out how to navigate this difficult conversation or this difficult person. But then know that sometimes there is a wall, right? We just can't get through that. We can't move past it. But I think, yeah, like, as you're talking, it's like, how do we stay in control of what that next move is?
Agency, one of my favorite things to talk about, right? Taking agency over ourselves. And it, well, Louise was chatting, Chuck, I was thinking about 15 years in one organization, and I was there for a part of it. Probably not every moment at that organization was rainbows and sunshine and unicorns. Are there lessons that that you've learned through some of those crunchier times, even in a job that you're like, this absolutely is the right fit?
Yeah, great question. What comes to mind for me immediately is everything is relative. So sure, there are some, I think that there's always going to be rough patches, in life, right? In your career, and so thankfully, those rough patches in my current organization don't come close to the rough patches that caused me to look elsewhere when I was in other roles. And I remember, being in rough patches in other jobs and thinking to myself, life is too short to be unhappy and to be miserable. Why am I doing this? But now I think to myself, boy, if I maybe just stuck that out a little while longer, what could I have learned? This is to Louise's point. What could I have learned, had I stuck it out? How would that in fact, have built, some new aspect of character for me, had I not cut and run. But I'll go back to everything is relative, and so thankfully it just hasn't happened. In this current organization where things have been that bad, but that's not to say that there haven't been rough patches either.
Sure. And that, yeah, I think that's the reality, as you said, about life and about organizations, about all organizations, understanding. And I think comes with a little bit of maturity. And I don't necessarily mean age, but maturity being openness to a lot of experiences, right? We can have a lot of experiences in a very short period of time, but being able to mature through those and understand where our agency is, that Louise was talking about, how to gauge its relative meaning for ourselves and what is most important for ourselves. Because I think that's where we can derail ourselves and feel like I'm done, I'm out. There are some toxic situations where absolutely that's the right answer. And there are some other situations where maybe it's our ego that got bruised, or maybe somebody, right, that there's a person that you're having to operate with. I had that, not where we work together. I had that in a different organization where there was that one person, and I'm like, I cannot stay here because of them. And my big learning curve was being intentional and saying, I can stay here, even though they're making my job really, really, really hard, and they're making my life really, really, really unhappy. And I will give it this long a period of time for me to recognize what I need to recognize and to learn that skill of being in a uncomfortable position. And then I choose to move on. But it was very intentional at that point, and that came with maturity. And that's what I'm talking about there. So managing others, right? So not only our kids, when we're talking about our kids or talking with our kids about what it's like, but when we're in that situation of when we manage others or we have colleagues that we oversee in different ways, how do you support them in their growth and development in recognizing whether or not this is a good fit? And how have you worked with that?
So I want to clarify that I am not managing folks now. I have in the past, but my current role I'm not. Don't really miss it, to be honest with you. And it isn't because I didn't like managing people. For me, I would rather not be spending a whole lot of time approving expense reports and that kind of stuff. But Kim, I think the first thing that I can think of is that you need to put in the time to provide ongoing positive feedback, and put in the time to give honest and thoughtful performance reviews, and so that they can, so that your employees can, take constructive criticism and deal with that and react to it. Either they react to it in a good way, or they don't react to it at all, and but that to me is what is, what helped me in terms of managing folks over the years. And, nothing gave me more um, um, satisfaction in managing folks than when they did decide to move on, because it was the right time for them, because we couldn't offer them anything more.
Mhm.
And Kim, you even know one or two of these folks that stayed with us for a good long time. And yeah, it was time. I was sad to see that person go, um, but also very, professionally um, uh, satisfied, I guess, that they were able to leverage everything they learned and in this job, and take it to another level, and continue their career uh, path in a positive upward way.
Yeah. I think those relationships that we have with our colleagues, with those that we manage, with those that have managed us, when we have that candor with them, when we have that comfort, that trust, that belief in ourselves and in them, and we can have those conversations with them, that's where the magic happens. Because whether it's right for you to stay in a role for 15, 16, 17 plus years, or if it's right for you to move on for whatever reason it is, for whatever tenure you are there, if your teammates, regardless of level, if your teammates are there to support you in that decision, it's maybe you don't have those questions of, well, if I had just stuck it out, maybe this would have, right?
Yeah. Yeah, you get to a place of that there are no regrets. Like that it's time to move on for whatever reason, good reasons or not so great reasons, but that you've put your best self forward, and that you have people that help you do that. I see feedback as a gift, right? That positive feedback or that constructive feedback, and we shy away from it so much. It's a struggle for me as a harmonizer. I want to make sure everybody's happy, but when we can be clear and kind in our feedback, man, it's a gift, and it really helps, right? We lead people up into promotions, or we lead them out into great jobs. So yeah, I love that.
Well, it's all part of finding the right fit,
It
is
is.
being able to know that those around you are being really clear and candid and kind, even if it's a tough thing to say or hear.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, I mean, I know so I'm an example, right? I still absolutely appreciate and adore the organization that you are still at, that I am no longer at. And it was the right time for me to move on when I did, for all the reasons that I needed to move on, because that wasn't a right fit for that time in my life. It's not saying there's anything wrong with the organization or the people
Right.
that are in the organization,
Mhm.
because I still have a tremendous amount of respect. And then there are those other organizations that I know that I've been with that I'm like, hard for me to hold that same space for. But it's also the difference in who we surrounded ourselves with, right? In different places. It goes back to the people that we started talking about at the beginning of the hour.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So Chuck, any other thoughts that you have in terms of, as people are listening and thinking about for themselves, have I found a right fit? Do I need to move on? Do you have any other thoughts that you kind of want to share with the world on that?
I'd say I'd say follow your passion. That's I didn't, right, for a while. I let it lie fallow, and so what would have happened had I not done that? Where would I be today? Hard to say. Um, might not be talking to you on this podcast right now, but anyway, I so yeah, follow your passion. It's again, I didn't do it, but right now that I am doing it, I'm very professionally and personally gratified by it.
Yeah. Yeah. And you've been doing it for, almost 15 years now, which
Right.
is, it's a beautiful thing. Yeah. Yeah. So, I would love to know kind of what are our golden nuggets from this conversation? What are we taking away with us and kind of placing in our hearts or in our back pockets, just to go with us and out into the world?
For me, I think, Chuck, when you were talking about having regrets, right? And talking about, where those places that, maybe I could have stuck it out a little bit longer. I could have done something a little bit different. And I think, when I talk to people about finding work that fits and feels good, it is about not having those regrets. It is about kind of like, what can I be doing now? Cleaning up my own yard before I see the grass is greener over on the other side. Like, how can I make sure that when I do move, I'm moving for all the right reasons and for all my reasons, and that I'm not going to have regrets, regardless of where I land. Could land in a place that's not as great as the one I just left, but that's okay, because I'm going to just move. I'm just going to skip and move to the next one because now I'm more in control, right? I'm not going to have those regrets. I think that was just such a great reminder, is that how do we just make sure our yard is clean before we're looking over the fence to say, hey, what's over there? Making sure our next move is a good move and it starts from a good place.
Chuck, how about you? What are you taking away?
Yeah, as I'm thinking about this, and I was just writing some notes here, and it isn't really anything that we talked about specifically. We kind of danced around it a little bit, and that is just keep plugging away. Keep plugging away. I had after my first job, which was about a 6-month job, I then landed a job for 6 years, and then I had 1, 2, 3 jobs in about a 5-year span before I landed my other job that was a 6-year stint. And then I went about, let's call it 5 or 6 other jobs in a short period of time before I landed a 15-year stint. And so just keep plugging away. That I know it probably doesn't sound glitzy or nuggety, but it's the truth. I mean, that's, at least in my case, it's happened. I just didn't lose faith, kept trying the next thing until I landed something that I'm really, really happy.
I love that. Yeah, it's funny because nuggets don't have to be glitzy. Golden nuggets in and of themselves provide their own shine because they're simple. They're something that we're like, yeah, duh. You just keep trying, keep going, right? Absolutely, keep going and know thyself. So you talked about being in 5th grade. This is my nugget. You talked about being in 5th grade and knowing love of Spanish started then. I talked to somebody earlier today. This was the person that I talked about earlier, who talked about knowing that since she was 5 years old, so 5th grade, 5 years old, there's something about 5s today, that she loved design. She loved drawing and creating design, even at a very young age. And by the time she was 14, she landed her first gig as a designer. And she's thinking about what she's doing moving forward. But our younger selves are really smart.
Mm-hmm.
And so my nugget, again, something we didn't explicitly talk about, but I think is really important here, is trusting the wisdom of our inner selves. And our inner selves are really our younger selves that are still with us. Because Chuck, that is who I saw when we sat down to that interview 15 years ago. I saw that 5th grader getting really excited about going on some international travel and being able to use his Spanish and being able to help other kids, even though you were in a grown adult body, right? That's what I saw. And that wisdom that you had the whole time with you is able to be here today with us. So that's my nugget.
Love it.
Yeah.
Chuck, if people want to stay connected with you or to talk with you and find out what you're doing in the world, where are the best places for them to find you?
So I'm on LinkedIn. I think I'm the only Chuck Allworth on LinkedIn and Facebook, and I'm pretty good about keeping up with both of those. So that's probably the best place for anyone who's watching that like to connect with me.
Perfect.
Oh,
Louise, what do we have going on in the world?
we do stuff.
We do stuff.
We do stuff.
Tell you what we
Other
do.
than talking to great people about their careers, we actually do stuff when we show up in the world. And so we have a whole big collection of humans, beautiful humans, who are all looking to create their own kick-ass careers, finding work that fits and feels good. And you can join us in the Kick-Ass Career Collective just by visiting our website. So check that out. There's an opportunity to join for free, to come in and check it out. We have some great events coming up. You'll also be able to see those events if you go to our website. We have a great series on the go right now, all about these little micro bursts to make macro movements. And we have another session coming up real soon, next week.
On Thursday. Yeah, on the 30th.
Yeah. All about micro planning and how to bring that into our lives in a really quick and easy way. So check that out all at your kickasscareer.com. And next week is Wendy, Embracing Resilience and Radiance. See, I kind of pay attention to these things. I can't wait to talk to Wendy. She's been somebody who's reinvented herself a little bit too, over and over again. And so we're going to talk to her and her beautiful book that's coming out real soon.
It's actually already out. It's out.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay, see.
Great. Already out. We'll learn more about that next week, though.
Absolutely. So tune in then. Chuck, it has been a real pleasure to meet you and chat with you. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast today and sharing your story. I think it's so important for folks to hear how they can craft their own kick-ass careers by hearing about yours.
Thanks, Louise. I appreciate the time today, and glad to have spent the past 45 minutes with you all. Kim, miss you.
Chuck, I said it to Louise before we went live, and I will say it to the world. You're one of the kindest, that's just kind, generous, wonderful human beings that I've ever met. And I am so glad that we had this time together, and I'm just so glad that we're still in each other's lives. So,
ditto. Thanks, Kim.
You're welcome. All right. We will see everybody next week. Thanks so much.
Take care. Bye for now.